a talk about Yasutani Roshi, who's a great Zen master, who taught over here, in a Japanese Zen master who came over and taught Kapla Roshi in the Rochester Zen Center. And one morning, he was in his room chanting the Heart Sutra, and tears were streaming down his face, and he was sobbing, and they were wondering, wow, I mean, because it's such an unemotional type thing, it can be thought of as being kind of nihilistic, you know. But it was interesting, and I think that he was really embodying that fullness of emptiness there, or he was really being kind of pulled by the spirit of the life force that it's full of. You know, when Thich Nhat Hanh says emptiness is full of our life force, it's just empty of notions. It's empty of clinging to thoughts. So this teaching about emptiness is something we can come back to again and again. And gradually, we just kind of accept that we can't grasp it conceptually. And we can accept that, and that can be an opening to the deep feeling of that which is with us every moment of our life. And I really liked a quote from Rupert Spira that Jane put at the beginning of the last Sangha newsletter, where Rupert says, "Security and happiness can't be found in anything that comes and goes. Find whatever it is in your experience that doesn't appear, move, change, or disappear, and invest your identity, security, and happiness in that alone." So that presence, you know, that is its qualities. That is our, I like to call it the awareness of just being present. You know, it's our being, it's our total being that's with us all our life. And its qualities are also, you know, limitless, vast openness. It's not stained or harmed in any way by any experience. And it's also, you know, impersonal in the sense that it's not unique to any one being. It's totally saturates and is the very substance of all being. So it's impersonal that way. But it's very personal in that it's more intimate than any other experience we'll ever have when we fully realize it. Closer than close is the phrase that's used. So I was going to lead into that and read a little bit about Reb's experience when he visited Huineng's temple. So they're in China, and he's going out to visit the temple, the monastery. And Rusa, his wife, says, "I wish you well as you go now to meet your ancestor." Hearing these words, my whole body resounded with joy. We approached the temple gate, and as we entered, I felt joy. Unexpected goosebumps arose all over my body, and tears started to flow from my eyes. We walked forward and climbed the stairs of the great hall of the monastery, and we entered. My body felt moved to offer prostrations. The usual number is 3, and 3 were offered, and yet the bowing continued. And then there were 9 bows, and the bowing continued, and the sweat started flowing along with the tears, and the bowing continued, until it seemed that the bows would never end. And yet at what seemed like 108, the bowing stopped. The robes were soaked, and the heart was joyful to meet the ancestor who was born of perfect wisdom. So this, you know, this for me was a real teaching about a lot of things, but one thing that stands out for me is a real teaching about personal effort versus grace. This was purely grace. He wasn't expecting, and he wasn't going there, I want to experience my deep devotion or anything. It all just happened, you know, and then it all just stopped. So there was no Reb there. He wasn't grasping. He was just fully receiving the spirit of Huineng, which was his own spirit. You know, he probably would think that was one of the most intimate moments of his life, I would imagine. And so just that devotion, that spirit, there was a complete freedom to fully feel that joy, that oneness. And I was remembering also some weeks back, I think when Gary was giving the talk, he was talking about when we experience bliss, it's an opportunity to give it away. And so, I feel like the prostrations were his way of giving away the bliss, saying bye-bye bliss. And he also said at that point, that we may feel when we give away the bliss, we're also giving away that sense of being a separate self. And I think that, both he and Yasutani Roshi, when he was reciting the Heart Sutra with all that feeling, it's like when we realize that the separate self really isn't something that can bind us, sometimes we just get flooded with the joy, and Rupert Spire also talks about that our longing is really kind of the gravitational pull of our true nature drawing us into that deep intimacy. So I was very moved by that, and it inspires me to keep practicing, and we haven't reached it yet, but that intimacy can go deeper. In fact, the depth is infinite, just like the infinite being we are. So, thank you. We have time for discussion. All right.
Thank you so much for that. Since I've been coming here, this word intimacy has been resonating through my mind and body, and what is that exactly? And that story of the bowing really just clicked with me, and it reminds me of times when because I have this in my head that I don't connect with people, and I'm not, I don't know what that intimacy is. But that just gave me the awareness that I actually do. There's so many times when I am connected with somebody and tears just come into my eyes. And I think, it just happened the other day with a massage therapist, somebody I don't even know. But it is this connection. And so thank you very much for that. I'm going to sit with this a little more. But I really appreciated that example. It's helped a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, it's hard for me to define exactly what intimacy is, but the best I can come up with is recognition of the love of our shared being. It's just something melts. The root of our resistance melts when we feel that closeness, like we're part of everyone.
Thank you for your talk, Shuken. I think the story that resonated with me was also the bowing And it really made me think of how grateful I am for the concept of lineage in practice, that so many people before me sacrificed so much so that I could be offered the teachings of Zen. And that gratitude was so beautifully expressed by Reb. 108 vows. I mean, I had to do that. 108 vows for the 84 ancestors that came before me, or 85, 85. Bush and I are the 86th recipients. That would be a lot of vows. And but they're all part of that intimate link of lineage. And when I think of all those beings that came before me, I'm really speechless when I think about it, and very, very grateful.
Shiken, thank you for your talk. As always, I especially appreciate that you emphasize the devotional aspect of our practice. A lot of times people are confused about Buddhism, and they say, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And our practice is religious, not in the sense that we worship anything outside of ourselves, or ourselves, our idea of ourselves, but that we have this devotion to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, as like the guideposts in our life to keep us grounded and keep us from flying away in how many different directions. The Diamond Sutra is one of my favorites. I confess I haven't read all of it, but Roshi Kennedy, who Millie knows well, gifted us with a shortened version of the Diamond Sutra, and in it we see all the paramitas mentioned and the essence of each paramita. So I encourage you, if you have a copy of the Sutra book at home or next time you come to the Zendo, just read it over. It's absolutely beautiful. To me, like the Heart Sutra, it's one that I go back to again and again. And especially the verse at the end. Thus shall we think of this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a phantom in a dream. And that's just a reminder of the truth of impermanence, the fluidity of our life, and how important it is to me to stay grounded in practice, to stay present, lest we miss any of these wonderful things that are passing through us as we interact with other beings. And on a personal note, I love Huineng, and I recommend, if you have the opportunity to read more about him, that you do. He was the founder of the 5 major schools of Zen, and as Gato said, talking about lineage, we can trace all of this back to Huineng, to the teachings of the Diamond Sutra, and how he was able to package all of that and pass it on so beautifully. So again, many thanks, Shiken, for sharing your remembrances of Roshi Red, a very remarkable man. Thank you.
Thank you, Shikan. Another great talk. Lots to think about. I really like the story too of the temple. When you talked about the being, you talked about like the qualities, or not the essence, but sort of like that, the kind of like we all encounter, or that we're part of, or that flows through us, that's flowed through our lineage so that we can be here. I don't know, I was just trying to understand that a little bit more. Thank you.
I'm still trying to understand a little bit more too. But
You meant the being, like the qualities of it?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've always, lately been realizing more and more that our actual experience of our being is the real test of reality rather than what we think about it. Of course, things aren't what we think they are. So if you think about it, like one line in the Diamond Sutra that I was going to read, but I didn't, the Buddha talks to Subhuti, who was his attendant, and he says, Subhuti, can you have a conception of space expanding eastward, And Subhuti says no, and then can you have a conception of space north, south, west, above, below? And he says, no, I can't. It says, so now we realize that space has no dimensions, has no form. So that's something we can pretty easily realize, that we can't conceive of endless space. Or in eternity too, eternity isn't an incredibly long stretch of time, it's beyond time. So we're talking about something that's not perceivable or describable, but it's vast openness in our experience. It's not stained or harmed by whatever arises. It's the mind inside us that feels something's wrong, something is stained. The raw emotion itself is just a vibration, a movement. This is stuff we have to deeply contemplate before we really embody it fully. But it's also, it's limitless, it's unconditionally accepting, and intimate, closer than, it's something we share with all beings. In our own experience, we begin to realize that. But in itself, it's not perceivable or describable. It's just everywhere, It's kind of like the current in the ocean is made of the water. It's made of ocean water, so it can't be any closer than that. It can't be any more intimate than that. Everything is that is our one being. It's our being, Rupert says something like, nothing could be separate from being, or it couldn't be. It's kind of an interesting little phrase, but it makes a lot of sense, or kind of like saying, when you know what you are what you know. Kind of obvious, but like kind of profound at the same time, that we actually are what we are. We can't be anything other than we are. And we can't really describe it, so we can't really understand it much better than we can just kind of try to understand it, try to describe it. But we get this intuitive sense of the togetherness, of the support we get from others in our shared being. And we open to that, not grasp it or try to possess it, but share it, give it away. Does that help a little bit? Yeah.
Shikan, thank you for that. Thank you again, everyone. We are coming to the end of our time. Any last words or? I would just like to add, I challenge you to do 108 vows. I mean, really, if you're struggling, well, what kind of exercise should I do today? I challenge you to 108 vows. And, you know, yes, you will sweat, but you will, at some point, at least in my experience, you will be so immersed in the activity that you will get that taste of non-separation, and perhaps experience a taste of what a Roshi Anderson experienced. I'm making no guarantees, but I just challenge you. So, Gato Roshan, any announcements?
Join us on Saturday for our usual sit, beginning at